Hello. I'm starting a new project tonight. September 13th, 2020. It's 1:09 a.m. I'm starting a new project. I'm going to be calling it My Death Reserves. Not death metal, not heavy metal. I call this My Death Reserve. See, in the last 4 years, 5 years actually, I've watched quite a few people die and move on into the next realm. I've called it murder. A lot of times I believe it's murder. It could have been stopped. Some of them, somebody wanted dead. I mean, that's why people get murdered. Somebody wanted them dead, so they get murdered. Others, it was a crime of opportunity. They wanted something else, and that person's death helped them get it. For the most part, none of these murders have been prosecuted. None of them have even been identified or acknowledged as murder. Something else. Medical, old age. Usually medical or old age. Heart attack, stroke, brain tumor. Sometimes I can track the tech that ends up coming as a result of their murder. The deals that got hooked up, sometimes the lawsuits. But really, the reason these people end up dying is because somebody wants the stuff they had in life. So I'm going to give my death reserve tonight. See, I'm tired of this bitch down game where somebody thinks it's okay to expose me to some threat of death. And while, so far at least, I haven't actually died, some part of my life is supposed to die, and then I'm supposed to behave in some way that's gonna placate whoever is the sadistic asshole that does this shit. But I'm really tired of that. And it's been a long time, and I don't want these guys that I watch go the other way get deposited into somebody's little family account so that they can appropriate it and do some shit with it. It's not even acceptable. So I'm going to give you one tonight. I'm going to give you my story. This is what I call my death reserve. A drawdown on the death reserve. And I'm going to start with Paul O'Neill. Anybody remember when Paul O'Neill died recently? Well, first of all, let me say, me and Paul go way back. All the way back to senior year of high school. See, I didn't know until around the time that Paul O'Neill died that he was the secretary of the Treasury while I was the treasurer of my high school. I had been elected to be treasurer of the graduating class of 1995. I'm sure I know quite a few things about Paul based on my time as treasurer in my high school. It was interesting, there was a transition. That year there were actually 3 secretaries of the treasury. One coming in, one was just there for a little while, and one came in after him. But the thing about Paul O'Neill that's very compelling that I've learned is that Paul O'Neill presumably was involved in this organization that did a lot of work around derivatives. And I have some experience with derivatives. See, in high school they wanted me to flip Pop-Tarts. They had these Pop-Tarts in the school store. My job was to sell them a 10-minute break, maybe around the end of lunch. And, these Pop-Tarts would always be there. It was the only snack we really had. Pop-Tarts, I mean, it sounds fine, right? You don't think about what's it mean. Maybe not till 10, 20 years later, right? My job was to sell the Pop-Tarts, keep track of the Pop-Tarts. Somebody else was supposed to keep track of what I kept track of. Let's put it that way, right? It wasn't until a while later that I understood what was going on. And apparently during the time when Paul O'Neill was Secretary of the Treasury, one of the things he had to deal with was the early warnings about Enron. I have a couple of articles, some speeches, and some interviews Paul O'Neill did about Enron. He says this thing in there. One of the things he says is like, yeah, I mean, people should have known, perhaps, but how many times does this happen? And, we don't expect everybody to know in the same way that the expectation had been put on Enron. I was kind of thinking for a while about this because of the context around his death. See, when Paul O'Neill died, there was an article that had been published discussing how the Cherokee Nation had a ceremony in a particular part of the country close to where I'm living now, where they acknowledged the aid that they sent to Ireland during the Irish potato famine. And what they did as a result of the various factors connected to the Irish potato famine. I now know that part of Paul O'Neill's departure has to do with the data that was acquired on people who were afflicted during the Irish potato famine. Have you ever seen it? It's something to see. Books, page after page after page, number, name, district, hundreds, maybe thousands of pages, deaths, counties, names. How long do you think it takes to pay back that health care? I think Paul O'Neill knew. I think that's part of the reason he died when he died. That's a little story about Paul O'Neill for you tonight. I'm going to keep this kind of brief. Don't want to drag it out.